Yes, thank you, Madam President. Would Senator Parker yield for a series of questions?
Senator Parker, will you yield?
I will.
Senator Parker, I think part of a partial explanation that has been put forward by your side of the aisle, I've read in the newspapers and I've heard here on the floor today and last evening, was that the $7.2 billion that has come from the federal government, since it has come from the taxpayers by way of the federal tax levy as opposed to the state tax levy, that somehow this is not real spending and that this does not count toward the spending that is included in this budget. Is that what you're proposing, Senator Parker?
Senator Lanza, through you, Madam President. Senator Lanza, I suggest that if, in fact, you want to tell the family that lost their primary wage earner that we should not, in fact, put money into, more unemployment insurance, that's fine. If you want to tell people who lost their health care that we, in fact, as the state, should not provide any health care for them, that's fine. You can tell them that. If you want to go back and tell those folks who were sending their children to a diocese school that has now closed, and now they have to go to public schools, that there's no room in the public schools for them because we didn't want to put more money into public schools. If you want to tell them that, that's fine. The reality is we're in a situation where we got money called stimulus money that, frankly, was already decided at the federal level. So what I'm hearing you yourself and members across the aisle say to me is that we were giving $25 million to help us solve our problems, and we shouldn't spend the money to, in fact, restore the cuts that we would have needed to make. The reality is this. The governor presented us with a $121.3 billion budget. He, in fact, said to us when he gave us the budget that the deficit was going to be about $15 billion. He made $9 billion in cuts. And we added stimulus money plus another $3 billion to, in fact, restore those cuts. And to, in fact, take a number of nuisance taxes off the table so that our consumers and our constituents would not have taxes on things like soda and things like bowling alleys and gym memberships and cable TV. I mean, there's all kinds of things. Haircuts. I mean, there was all kinds of nuisance taxes in there. We took those out, but in order for us to do that, we had to buy those things back, and we bought most of those things back with stimulus money that we were given, and had we not spent the money, we would have lost it. So it was important for us to spend stimulus money because that was the stimulus is for.
Madam President, would Senator Parker continue to yield?
Senator Parker, do you continue to yield?
Absolutely.
Well, I thank you for that response. I think for the first time we've heard in this chamber that stimulus money has actually been spent in this budget, and we shouldn't ignore the fact that it is part of a $132 billion budget, which does reflect a 10% increase in spending over last year. And no, Senator Parker, I don't want to tell anyone in this state that I don't want to provide the sort of vital services that they deserve and that they've come to expect from this legislature. But I also don't want to sell them a bill of goods. And it's important for them to understand that at a time when they're being asked to tighten their belts, it seems that this legislature is going off on a spending orgy. You said, Senator Parker, that $7.2 billion federal stimulus money is not coming out of our pockets. From whose pockets is that money coming from?
Madam President, through you, I never indicated that money wasn't coming out of our pockets. I just indicated that the decision to spend that money was made at the federal level. And we were, in fact, allocated that money the way every other state was allocated that money. Now, if you want to be like Louisiana and vote to send the money back and not accept the money, then maybe you should run for governor and make that decision. Our governor, I think, made the prudent choice and accepted the stimulus money, and we're, in fact, using that stimulus money in the way we, in fact, should be using it, which is to stimulate the economy to, in fact, restore money for education, for health care, for unemployment insurance, for housing, for transportation. And I think that we're going to be a better state down the road exactly because we're using this money in the way that it was intended to be used. And because we're using it in the way it was intended to be used, people will not be unemployed, hopefully as long as they would without it. People will have access to health care. People will have access to education, so that when the economy, in fact, makes its natural corrections and starts to go on an upswing, that people will be available for the jobs that will be created in the state. And so I'm very, once again, Madam President, proud of this budget, because I think that it does some things in a very tough situation that needs to be done for the future of the state.
Senator Parker, you claimed today that 96% of New Yorkers will not pay additional taxes in this budget. I'm sure you agree with me that whether it's a fee that a New Yorker has to pay or a tax that they have to pay, it's all the same, because unlike the rhetoric here, the people back home don't get to make believe that some money comes from someone else's pocket and it's not really spending when it is spending. They've got one family budget and they've got to deal with it. So I guess my question to you, and I was going to go down the list, much in the same way as Senator Solan did, but are you saying that 96% of New Yorkers don't pay property tax? Because, of course, this budget has a property tax increase. Are you saying that 96% of New Yorkers aren't going to buy bottles of water because, of course, they're paying more for that? Are you saying that 96% of New Yorkers aren't going to turn on the television or try to run their refrigerator and therefore not have to pay the tax and assessment on electricity? Are you saying 96% of New Yorkers are not going to have to get in a car and therefore avoid paying the increased assessment on the driver's license and the license plate? Are you saying that 96% of New Yorkers are not going to have to pay auto insurance and therefore avoid your tax on auto insurance? Are you saying that 96% of New Yorkers are not going to have to go to a doctor or are not going to make a visit to a hospital or are not going to pay for a health care premium and therefore avoid your tax on all those services? Are you saying that 96% of New Yorkers are not going to send their kids to college and therefore avoid your tuition increases? Are you saying that 96% of New Yorkers are not going to go to a grocery store or a liquor store and buy wine or beer and therefore avoid your taxes? And I can go on, but is that what you are saying, Senator Parker?
Madam President, through you, Senator Lanza, I think that there is a significant difference between what people have to pay and what we're voting on, and calculate the things that we've done. 96% of the people in this state are being held harmless as it relates to taxes. Many things that you're talking about are fees and other things that people do because they are users of certain services. And again, when the prices of things have gone up and we have less money to pay for them, we need ways to do it. What I would love to see from the Senate minority is something that we did when we were a minority, which is put forward a plan. It's okay to stand across the room and throw bombs. It's another thing to provide a plan that takes us into the future, that makes the tough choices that had to be made in this budget, and that uses the money that was given to us from the federal stimulus in a way that stimulates the economy in the state of New York. I hope that, as we go forward through this process, that we'll have less bomb throwing and more sharing of ideas of how you, in fact, spend money that's really there, as opposed to just talking about restoring money in places without any, ideas or suggestions about where money should be spent from outside of invisible slush funds. Thank you.